Thank you for coming to MTG Anonymous, your daily source for random free-to-play decks on MTG Arena. I would appreciate it if you would like, comment, and subscribe whenever you get the chance. Also, feel free to watch any other content that I've produced. I'll see you in the video. Alright, welcome to MTG Anonymous. As always, we're playing just some standard MTG Arena, and yep, we're playing pretty much all the Orzhov cards we got, and then everyone's hated Cauldron Familiar. But let's go ahead and get into the first part. As always, average CMC is 3.2, which is a little high for me, but I just really like the way this deck flows overall. There are 22 creatures, 2 instants, 2 sorcery, 4 artifact, 2 enchantment, 4 planeswalkers, and 26 lands. I chose 26 because well, we need them, seeing as our mana curve is just a little bit higher. I figured more than 24 would be okay. Let's go ahead and get into this deck tech. First off, we have the Cauldron Familiar. For 1 black, you get a 1/1 cat. When Cauldron Familiar enters the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Sacrifice a food, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, and then that obviously pairs with Witch's Oven. For 1, you get an artifact that says tap, sacrifice a creature. Create a food token. If sacrificed creature's toughness was 4 or greater, create 2 foods instead. So not only is this Witch's Oven for Cauldron Familiar, because obviously that's what it can do, but we also want to sacrifice all of our creatures with Afterlife, so that way we can keep having creatures enter and leave the battlefield as we choose. And so then we can use things like Sorin or Kenrith to get them back after they've died, and then that's basically how this deck is going to work. We're going to sacrifice things using the Witch's Oven, or at the very most, Night of the Last Breath, and then after that, we can either A, bring them back using Sorin. Of course, we have to give the +2 every so often, so that way Sorin doesn't die, or we have to use Kenrith's 5 mana ability at the bottom that says bring a creature back from the graveyard to the battlefield. So that's how this deck is going to work. Corpse Knight for 1 and a black. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. It's a zombie knight and 2/2. So that's in here because obviously, as the Cauldron Familiar, or let's say the Seraph of the Scales, or Teysa Karlov enter the battlefield, make sure I'm thinking the right. Okay, as they enter the battlefield, then we'll deal 1 damage to our opponent, to each opponent, and then as we bring them back, we let them die, we bring them back again, they trigger this again. So we're going to keep doing that over and over again. On the opposite side, Cruel Celebrant for 1 and a black, you get a 1/2 vampire. When it or another creature or planeswalker you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So not only are we hitting when things die, we hit when they come back, and so, well, vice versa, hit when they die, hit when they come back. So that's basically what we want to be doing, obviously. And then the ones with Afterlife are the ones we're going to be going to grab and bring back and grab and bring back, because they're the ones that are going to make tokens as they die, and that's what we want. Imperious Oligarch, nope, can't say that word. 1 and a black, you get a 2/1 human cleric with vigilance, and then Afterlife 1. So again, once you get these 2 out, people aren't going to want to start blocking, and so what you can do is you can use this 2/1 to attack. If they don't block it, you still get the 2, and then you could probably sacrifice it with the Witch's Oven anyway, get the Spirit token, so now you're dealing 1 damage. You deal 2 damage because it swung and hit, you deal 1 damage because it died, you get 1 damage because creature entered, so, yep. 1 or more commander for 1 and a black, you get a 2/0 human knight with death touch. 1 or more commander's toughness is equal to the number of knights you control. Whenever it attacks, another target knight you control gains indestructible until end of turn. This is actually in here for the Witch's Oven. If we get enough of the Corpse Knights and Knight of the Last Breath in, then it'll be a 4 toughness. We can sacrifice it to the Witch's Oven, and then boom, now we made 2 foods instead of 1. We can use those to do things as we need. Despark for 1 and a black, exile target permanent with converted mana cost 4 or greater. This is really for Nissa when she shows up, because we cannot have that happen. We need to get rid of anything that wants our opponent's creatures to die. As such, that's what we're going to do that. Again, they can't stop our creatures from dying and coming back unless they have counterspells. Well, counterspell's not going to keep it from dying. So, as we get things in, we sacrifice them, deal damage. So the only thing we have to worry about is our opponent swinging at us, so we want to use this to get rid of things that would be able to swing at us. Knight's Charge, 1, a white and a black. Whenever a knight you control attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And then for 6, a white and a black, sacrifice it, return all knight creatures from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is actually in here for that 8 mana ability. We're going to want the Corpse Knights, Wintermour's Commander, and Knight of the Last Breath on the battlefield as often as possible. So we're going to play this as early as we can. We get a little extra value from the Corpse Knight if we decide to swing with it. So, and then things, after they all die, or a majority of them, we use that 8 mana. We bring them back because the 3 Corpse Knight and Wintermour are 8, or just the Knight of the Last Breath itself is 7. So it makes it worth it to do that. It's not great, but it's not bad. There are other ways to do this, and I'll show you those after we're done with the deck tech, but this is the one I prefer because our knights are important in this deck. Mostly just the Corpse Knight because, like I said, as things enter the battlefield, Corpse Knight is going to deal 1 damage to each of our opponents, and we need that damage. So, Seraph of the Scales, for 2, a white and a black. You get a 4/3 Angel with flying. For white, it gains Vigilance. For black, it gains Death Touch, and it has Afterlife 2. This is one of our better ones, seeing as it has Afterlife 2, and it's only a 4-drop. So, we can play Sorin +2 at once, and then -4 to bring the Seraph of the Scales back. Easy. Or, Kenrith we only waste 1 mana with Kenrith when we bring Seraph of the Scales back. So, I'm not too upset about using it. I'd be upset about using it for the Corpse Knight. We'll use it for the Cruel Celebrant because things are going to die, so we need that. But other than that, Seraph of the Scales and Knight of the Last Breath are really the things we're going to go for. Again, Golos we could go for too with Kenrith, but most of the time it's going to be Knight of the Last Breath or Seraph of the Scales. Takes Karlov, 2, a white and a black. If a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time, and the creature tokens you control have Vigilance and Lifelink. Super important in this deck. So now, instead of just having Afterlife 2, it has Afterlife 4, and then also Cruel Celebrant will trigger 2 times for each time a creature dies. So now, if we have 3 Cruel Celebrant out and 1 thing dies, we deal 6 damage to each opponent and we gain 6 life. So Taste of Karlov is, again, another one we need. Now, she gives our creature tokens Vigilance and Lifelink, and all of the Afterlife tokens are Vigilance. I mean, all of them are tokens. So once we use Afterlife, now those creatures can gain us life as they block, and then they'll also trigger Cruel Celebrant a second time. So Taste of Karlov is super important in this deck. Once we get some more wild cards, we're definitely going to be grabbing a few more of her, and we'll probably get rid of Basilica. But Basilica is also really good, so we'll go ahead and go over that next. For a white, a black, and a black, you get a 3/4 Spirit. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card, and you gain 3 life. So Kenrith, it's not as great. We gain 3 life from it, but we could also just gain a life, bringing something back, or killing something using Cruel Celebrant. So Basilica Bell Haunt isn't great, but it's not bad. We want to get rid of cards in our opponent's hands. Mostly just removal for our Planeswalkers, since we kind of want them. They're not necessarily important, as we still have Kenrith as our backup plan, but Sorin, we kind of don't want things happen to him, kind of. So, discard whenever it enters the battlefield. It'll also trigger Corpse Knight, obviously, and then we'll let it die, Cruel Celebrant, and then if we have nothing else to grab, we will grab it again. It's actually one of the best blockers in the deck, too, as a 3/4, so it'll work. Sorin, Vengeful Bloodlord, for 2, a white and a black. You get a legendary Planeswalker Sorin with 4 loyalty. As long as it's your turn, creatures and Planeswalkers you control have lifelink. +2, Sorin deals 1 damage to target player or Planeswalker, and then -X, return target creature card with converted mana cost X from your graveyard to the battlefield. That creature is a vampire in addition to its other types. So, what's going on here? The -X is really good, especially when it comes to grabbing the Corpse Knight, the Cruel Celebrant, Imperious Alark. Nope, can't say that word still. But basically, we just want to use this to grab our smaller creatures. If we absolutely have to, then we'll use it to grab Seraph of the Scales, but preferably what we do, we +2 one turn, and then we -2 the next turn, and so that way it stays relatively around 4. With the Afterlife creatures, we're able to block for Sorin, especially since they have flying. If our opponent has trample, that's another thing, but we would prefer it hitting Sorin instead of us anyway, so Sorin is also a great distraction while we're doing what we're doing anyway. Kenrith, the Return King, for 4 and a white. You get a 5/5 human noble legendary creature. So it has 5 different abilities, but we really don't care about that. We honestly only want the bottom ability. The top ability is okay. We don't have red, so that doesn't matter anyway. But we can either A, use the 2 and a white, target player gains 5 life. Gaining 5 life is pretty nice in this deck. And then, or you can use 4 and a black, put target creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield under its owner's control. So, since this is a 5 ability, we're probably going to want to grab something with 5 in the mana cost. So, Grasping Thrall, Golos, and Knight of the Last Breath are in here for that reason. Also, they're in here for discard, because our opponent's not going to know we have Kenrith until early. So, when they see Golos, they're instantly going to use Thoughtseize to get rid of it. So, basically, that gives us a free enter the battlefield trigger with Golos. Grasping Thrall, 3 a white and a black. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to each opponent, and you gain 2 life. It has flying. It's a 3/3. So, if you have 1 Corpse Knight out and 1 Cruel Celebrant out, Grasping Thrall enters the battlefield, deals 2 damage to each opponent. We gain 1. Corpse Knight says it deals 1 damage to each opponent, so that's 3 damage to each opponent. And then when we kill it, each opponent loses 1 life from Cruel Celebrant, and we gain 1 life. So, yep. Also, if Sorin is out when this comes out, because creatures have lifelink, it entered the battlefield and it deals 2 damage, so we gain 2 life from that as well. It's a little combo I like. So, unfortunately, because these say loses life, you don't gain anything from that, but it's okay. Next is Golos. For 5, whenever Golos enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a land card, put that card on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. We're going to use this to grab one of our either Godless Shrine, Orzhov Guildgate, or Temple of Silence. We have lots of planes, and we could put more dual lands in here, but there's not really a need once you get white and black. We're really only playing 1 card a turn anyway, until we get to above 6 mana, so that's how that's going to go. And then we don't have Wooburg, so we're not worried about that. We could add a card to put Wooburg in, but it's not really worth it. Revival or Revenge for Orzhov, converted twice. Return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then Revenge for a white and a black. Double your life total. Target opponent loses half their life rounded up. So, we have lots of creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less, but honestly, the better is doubling your life total and opponent loses half their life total. You can get lots of opponents to scoop, especially if you've been dealing damage as creatures enter, dealing damage as creatures die, rounding their life total down. Having their life total is pretty good for us, and then doubling our life total just widens the gap, obviously, so we like this. Kaya, Bane of the Dead, 3, and then Orzhov 3 times. You get a 7 loyalty Kaya Planeswalker. Your opponent and permanents your opponent control with hexproof can be the targets of spells and abilities you control as though they didn't have hexproof. And then -3 exile target creature. So we can do that twice, and then we can keep targeting our opponent's stuff. Kaya ain't as important as Sorin is, but having her out is nice. So we're going to keep her out as long as we can. We're going to only use that -3 if it's something we can't get through. So, Knight of the Last Breath for 5, a white and a black. For 3, sacrifice another non-token creature, create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. It's a 4/4 giant knight, and then it has Afterlife 3. So, this is another one of those with takes a Karlov out. We're going to want to sacrifice something like the Seraph of the Scales or the Grasping Thrall. Get that 1/1, and then bring it back using Kenrith. So we'll deal damage that way, or, well, we get the Afterlife when that one dies, so then we get that back when you're able to do it again. We don't have unlimited mana for that, but it's also very nice. So, and then for lands, we have 10 plains, 11 swamps, 1 Godless Shrine, 2 Orzhov Guildgate, and 2 Temple of Silence. So this deck tech is supposed to be quick, but it ran a little long, so there's not going to be a gameplay video after this one. If you'd like me to play a gameplay, feel free to leave it in the comments. That's all I've got for this video. Please like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching. Later.